changed the rules.
Print a little bit more.
Everybody was supposed to play by the rules.
Everybody wants to live a better life.
Poor penguins. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Culture Clash podcast, where Russian American discuss and debate some of the recent events in the world. Dima is back. So the chief investment officer for a major investment fund here in the region is joining us again. Dima, good to have you back.
Hi guys. Pleasure to be here again.
It hasn't been very long without you, but
yeah, unfortunate events, But what we were discussing last time was kind of exactly to the point of what is happening around us at the moment. So I'm glad to be here and discuss the details.
Very good. Good to have you. Happy birthday, Vlad. It was your birthday yesterday.
Thank you.
Got to give you a quick shout out. And most importantly to both of you and really to everybody, happy Liberation Day. We had Liberation Day in what was it? Not in April, on Thursday. So that was obviously a very big event.
April, what date was it?
I should remember because this will go down in history.
It was Wednesday, actually.
Was it Wednesday?
Wednesday in US. But
okay.
For us here in Dubai, it was like late evening Wednesday.
So that would have been April 2nd, right after April Fool's Day. So we'll remember that day for a long time. Excellent. Did you want to?
Yeah, so I know you guys haven't slept well for the recent days since both of you are involved in the investments in the American market. I know, Dima, you were quite anxious with the fund. I know you were quite anxious with your personal investment, Michael. So, yeah. What's the situation? What is happening with the tariffs? What is it about? What is this Liberation Day? Luckily, I don't have investments in the U.S. market, so I was quite chill over the recent
Thank you for emphasizing
days.
that. Yeah, thank you.
Tell us about the situation. What is this about?
You want the MAGA perspective first? Is that
no? I want like personal perspective first, and then I'll try to explain like what is happening financially, economically. But I think starting from personal angle is especially
great points.
Useful.
Let's start with your personal experience.
Sure. So again, you're the trained economist here at the table. So I think this is going to be an interesting discussion. Basically, my view is twofold. One, I'm broadly supportive of the idea of the U.S. changing the rules of global trade in this more protectionist direction. So that does mean tariffs. We voted for that. The MAGA people, a lot of far left people in the U.S. were also calling for that. I do think it's time to change the rules of trade as we've had them for the past, 80 years since World War II, particularly since the end of the Soviet Union and this globalization era. So concept, broadly supportive. That's me, myself. The rollout and implementation, I can't say I 100% agree with the way that Trump has gone about it. Obviously, he tariffed an island full of penguins, which has no human settlement, which to me only shows or calls into question how much thought was put into this, which is where my biggest concern comes in. I thought the tariff numbers were extremely high. So I think that's what shocked everybody was 34% tariffs on China, 20% on the EU. You had some countries, I think Vietnam was somewhere around 40 or 50%, something like that.
46%.
46%. Yeah, so these numbers are so dangerous because either they're made for negotiation or if they remain, they're going to crash the global economy. It's really that simple from my perspective. So I do give Trump a chance to try to make this work because I think he's trying to make deals out of this. That's my end takeaway. I don't think these tariff levels are going to remain. I don't think they can. So long story short, again, I support the change in direction. Again, I don't think Kamala would have delivered that change in direction. Biden clearly didn't. I like the concept of what he's doing. The way he's doing it has me a bit nervous is the short answer. But what's your guys' take on what's happening?
Great dissection by yourself. I think I'm almost everywhere agree with what you just told. Basically, if you like start following the market, let's start from Wednesday. What it was looking like.
We have to relive the
we
terrible couple days.
have to relive a little bit of that experience. Basically, when the first tariff was announced, that it would be like 10% unilaterally flat for everyone, market did not react at all. So usually that means that the market sort of expected this, and why not? Because the talking point of this of his address was tariffs. So market did not react. Obviously, it already was falling before that, since he became a president. Actually, went to the office. Market was already in fall, but you can argue that since his election, the markets are up quite a lot. So, but then he started to talk about this, what is called reciprocal. Let's explain actually what reciprocal means in plain English. It basically means that we are going to reply to whatever bad actions you are implying on us. So it's kind of a response.
So does it mean if I, as a country, impose 15% tariffs on another country, does it mean that they should also respond with 15%?
Yeah, that's basically a definition of reciprocal tariff. It means that you are going to reply in the same manner with the same percentage rate. But the tariffs that were discussed on that meeting on Wednesday, they were not reciprocal in any way
at
or
all.
form.
Yeah.
They just called them so, and they derived the formula how they would explain that this makes any sense. Almost everyone agrees that even people who are supporting President Trump's policies in general, I can simply persuade them that it's not reciprocal tariffs. That's
clearly not.
That's obviously politics. And then what we saw on the markets Thursday and Friday was a classic panic, because Trump,
when everything was in red.
Yeah, red wave, very Republican way of treating the market.
Red wave.
Yeah.
We love a red wave usually. We didn't love the red wave this time.
Yeah. It was quite something. It was comparable to the fall of the market back in
March 2020,
March
right?
2020, when COVID basically disrupted the whole economy. And I think when we start to analyze what is happening, there would be a lot of comparisons with COVID, because there are many interesting angles that are similar. But we saw the panic on the market, a lot of nervous selling, a lot of, as now reports are saying, a lot of actually not institutional money left the market, but regular people who trade. They left the market. A lot of people still are trading with a leverage, which in these times of distress is very dangerous for your account. That's why.
Are you trying to deliver a specific message to me?
No, not to you, but generally to people that these things happen. If you are going to follow the market, like I'm following it for a while, and these things just happen, you have to always keep in mind that your personal strategy or whatever business you are having should be ready for this kind of floppy couple of months. But generally speaking, we now see a lot of panic. Obviously, the episode would be out in a week from now, and whatever we are discussing here today could be completely irrelevant, because
as early as tomorrow.
Because Trump basically opened a big uncertainty box on Wednesday, and markets in general hate any kind of uncertainty. We are seeing it in front of us.
And I want to jump onto a point you just mentioned, which is the uncertainty piece and how Trump sort of decided to unleash this on everybody. And my take on, I think, why this is happening to begin with from a why now perspective and all of that. And again, jump in if you feel like this is not the right way for Trump to be reacting. But when I was trying to understand and make sense of, why now, why threaten the entire global economy all of a sudden 2 months into your administration, come out with reciprocal tariffs that are not actually reciprocal, but are based on trade deficits, and trade deficits have nothing to do with reciprocity in tariffs. So you're clearly trying to send a message as much as anything. You're not actually trying to balance trade from a tariff perspective, right? Because as you said, these aren't reciprocal tariffs. These are nuclear tariffs. These are,
restrictive, basically.
Very restrictive.
They are restricting the global trade, which is essential for an economy. Basically, any exchange of goods, services, and money in return is essential. It's a core of economy.
And it's the highest tariffs in 100 years,
Yeah.
which is insane. So literally overnight, and I was reading as well that the U.S. had on average a 1.5% tariff, I think in 2022, so a couple of years ago. And then suddenly Trump's announcement again on Wednesday in preparation for Liberation Day comes out with 22% average tariffs on the globe. That's more than a tenfold increase in tariffs in no time. What that does, I mean, if you think of global trade as almost like the blood flowing through the circulatory system, he just threw a clot right in the middle of that.
Good analogy.
And that could shut down the entire thing, right? This is the issue. You could have an economic heart attack. Now, all that being said, I want to break down why I think that's happening. I want you guys to jump in and provide your guys' thoughts on that as well. But the U.S., for example, and this is, again, why I'm sort of supportive of the concept, even if the rollout has been a bit chaotic. In the year 2000, the U.S. represented 25% of all manufacturing jobs globally. China was at 6%. In 2030, China is going to be at 45%, America is going to be at 11%. That's a major, major change. What changed during that time? You let China into the World Trade Organization. So them benefiting from the full advantages of globalization. And then obviously now I know the Economist is going to probably jump back and have some rebuttals, but I think this is one point. Then if I look a little bit deeper, what was U.S. government debt doing? The U.S. only had $6 trillion of debt in the year 2000. We're at $36 trillion of debt. We had a budget surplus in the year 2000. We now have a $2 trillion deficit. So the country has, from a financial point of view, been run into the ground. America has been running itself into the ground financially. So debt to GDP, 58% in the year 2000, 123% in 2025. Again, China's gotten so much stronger. GDP change, $1.2 trillion economy, China 25 years ago, $18 trillion today. Unbelievable. Now, why now, and you're probably going to push back, do tariffs solve any of these things? What I did see is that projected revenue from these tariffs, if they stay, big if, would be $700 billion. So it would be a significant amount of money when you consider that the U.S. deficit is $2 trillion. So $700 billion of tariffs obviously goes a decent way to closing that gap. Obviously, what the U.S. is doing with Doge and everything else is projected to save anywhere between $100 and $200 billion. So you can see the rationale is my only point. Change things up, get more jobs in the U.S., take the pressure off the government, raise some revenue via these tariffs. Again, we'll see if it actually is going to work. I think that's the question. I have my even reservations about that. But what's your assessment on what do you guys think about what I've laid out, if it makes any sense, if it's likely to solve the problems that we're talking about?
Dima,
I think, yes. Again, very long question, but
you should be used to that by now.
Yeah,
right?
let's try to discuss it. I think there are very good points why Trump may do this. My question is why he decided to do it so abruptly, so decisively. Why not, go for a negotiation with different trade parties, etc. Why do you need to make such a disruption for a global economy if it is in fact negotiation technique? I don't understand it. Maybe you have
Is that your question too?
Yeah.
I do actually have an initial thought. It actually comes straight from my book that I brought here for you guys, Accidental Superpower. So now I'm plugging this guy Peter Zeihan multiple times on multiple episodes in a row. But I think he lays out a brilliant framework for understanding what's happening geopolitically in this sort of new era that we're in. And I think chaos is almost the strategy of the U.S. I'm not saying that Trump is doing this. I'm not saying that his injecting of this chaos is a strategic decision. It could just be this is the way Trump is. But I do think the U.S. is becoming less predictable purposefully. So again, I don't think the U.S. has any vested interest in upholding the global trade order the way it used to. I think the global trade order, as we've seen, has not really advantaged us the way we might have thought it would have. And again, the economists might feel otherwise. But again, a lot of jobs were lost, a lot more debt that you have now, a global military apparatus which is expanded and ballooned to a behemoth. I was doing the research on this. We've got 128 military bases globally, 750 military facilities. We have 90% of the overseas bases of the planet. Why do we need all this? That costs money. So all this money and all this free trade that we've upheld has come at a cost from my perspective. So I do think there's a cost to it. I think that's part of why we're injecting this chaos, to get everybody, off kilter and uncomfortable, so that new alliances need to be formed, so new negotiations have to occur, and perhaps so we can make new deals. So as we've seen, the Vietnamese are looking to make a deal, the Israelis are looking to make a deal, the Indians,
India just said that they will not be participating in the war itself, like tariff war, and they will try to find a solution. So I want to believe in this. I want to believe that this is the message and this is the communication strategy rather than the economic strategy.
I do
Very
agree.
interesting.
I don't think it's an economic strategy.
But I want to believe this. Yeah, so I'm afraid that it might be an actual trade policy in the trade strategy or economic strategy, but I want to believe that it's more of a communication strategy.
Economists, what's your take?
I just find it really fascinating because for a very long time, in many developing countries, people and economists were explaining all the time how the infrastructure of global trade focused on the U.S. was profitable for the U.S. And we have to do something about that.
Walk me through why. Why was that?
Basically, when everything is traded in U.S. dollar, and this is a fact, before that it was a gold standard. America decided to withdraw from it.
Pre-1973 now we're talking.
Yes.
We're talking Bretton Woods, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So before that, there was a commodity, every country in the world accepted commodity to be a basis of value. And since Bretton Woods, basis of value became US dollar.
Bretton Woods was what year? 47, 48?
Yeah.
After the war.
It was right after the Second World War. I think it was 1948, I think.
Let's not
something like that.
Yeah. We'll put it in a podcast. We have a technique. But basically what happened, and the world in its entirety basically accepted US dollar to be the currency, which allowed US to take an enormous debt, which we've now
abused. Yeah.
Yeah. And US abused its ability to take debt. It's not the world's fault that US did it. But essentially what US was allowed to do is to take money or value from all around the globe, put it into US economy and then invest it.
And essentially we got the interest rates were always going to be lower, right? Because there was a constant demand for dollars, right?
And you control the interest rate basically for the US dollar, which means you control what is the price of dollar, because everything economy works, it adjusts everything with prices, and even money has price. Yeah, in short, there was a school of thought that the system that appeared after Bretton Woods is very profitable for American economy because they control everything, the main currency, the prices, the interest rates, so they can adjust it in a way that would help them guide global economy in a way or in a direction they find useful for themselves, for the America. And this is a great example of what we're seeing now. Basically, when America decides to do something, let's call it irrational from some standpoints, then the world watches. Yeah, everyone really scared about what is happening. Even though if, let's say, Russia does the same or India does the same, almost nobody cares, especially on a personal level. Economists may worry, etc. A prime example of why the system was really great for the US is stability. Because if something is wrong with, let's say, Russia, crisis of 1998, country completely goes to a default, which is impossible for the US. If everything is priced in US dollars, you can always print a little bit more and pay for it. It's very simplified, of course, and you can argue. So, but my message was that it's interesting how nowadays American politicians decided to employ a completely different narrative. That the system that was created with US economy dominance and with US dollar dominance is hurting. The main argument I hear from you and from many pro-Trump guys at this moment is that US lost a lot of manufacturing jobs, which is true, but I think it's completely normal. You should not be afraid that China takes your manufacturing jobs. You should be worried when China takes your engineering jobs,
which they're starting to do.
Designers, exactly, and they are starting to do
services.
Yeah, of course, there is always this important topic about every country should be at least in some way reliant on its own economy. It should not be fully reliant on everybody else. That's why some microstates like Singapore or Taiwan, they really care about their, for example, food security, water security. Correct. So this is really important for every country to understand where they are and how they are dependent on each other. You can transfer it to a personal level. Yes, we all have our surroundings. We have to understand how we are dependent on our employer or on our employees, on our neighbors in a building. So, this is a relationship. You have to work it out. And what America does at the moment is just very dangerous. And I think market shows, it's not fully rational at the moment, but it still shows the direction where it might go. And the direction is a global recession.
Yeah, look, I agree. If it stays this way, I think the market is just getting warmed up in terms of how bad it could get if these tariffs remain. Because these tariffs, again, are 100-year high tariffs, massive change overnight. Fine. But I want to push back on something you said, because you're talking about Bretton Woods and the benefits America has received from it. Yes, and we've gotten huge benefits from it. But I think most of those benefits have not been in globalization, but they've been in the Bretton Woods economic and currency system. So all commodities are traded in US dollars. Massive advantage. If you want to buy oil in Japan or China or Russia, you buy dollars first, and then you go buy your oil or natural gas or food commodities or whatever that is. That's a huge benefit. We're the global reserve currency. As you said, we get, we can print almost as much money as we want, and we can run up huge debts. Theoretically, if we had invested that money wisely, we would be in a phenomenal position. Clearly, we haven't. But I don't think that's the problem. We, the Americans, want to keep that. We, the MAGA people, even want to keep that. I think what these tariffs are trying to do is to renegotiate the trade side of it. We want to separate the trade side, bilateral trading, from the currency side and Bretton Woods side. So almost like an updated Bretton Woods. And the reason that's so important, I was looking into what has China done, because you just mentioned manufacturing jobs in and of themselves are not necessarily the end of the world. But China has moved from manufacturing to now value add, which is they produce cars, they produce telecom, they produce AI, they produce airplanes, which we talked about on our first podcast episode. Yeah. These guys are ascendant everywhere. What did they do to get that done? They started with manufacturing. All the measures that China's taken, this is a country that we, the Americans, supported entering the World Trade Organization, where everybody was supposed to play by the rules. What do the Chinese do? Chinese government, that is. They have tariffs and import quotas on a variety of different industries and for a variety of different countries. They provide subsidies, particularly for important and strategic industries like electronics, automotives, renewables. We see here in this country and a bunch of other countries, the Chinese cars are everywhere now on the road. These Chinese companies benefit from massive subsidies. That's not playing by the rules. That's not free trade. So American companies, the American government doesn't do that. The European governments don't do that. The Russian government doesn't do that. That's part of the violation of the free trade principles. So currency manipulation. Again, the Chinese yuan is not a free-floating currency, right? So the Chinese essentially manage the currency. That is another issue. So the euro is a free-floating currency. The dollar is free-floating currency. The Aussie dollar, all of that, right? I mean, this is a major distinction. State-owned enterprises. The Chinese have entire state-owned enterprises that are essentially loss-making machines, but designed just to employ people and ensure that production and throughput is more important than profitability. That's one thing. Export credits. The Chinese have a system of export credits and financing to promote exports, to be dominant in particular industries, and to export more to gain economic and political influence. They have technology transfer requirements. When you operate in their country, you, in some instances, are required to transfer certain technologies over to the local Chinese companies. And then again, certain industrial policies, Made in China 2025, they have long-term planning and strategy, but they consistently violate these free trade principles. So my only point is, we, the MAGA people in the US, have the feeling that you need to change the rules of the trade system because it's been abused, and we have allowed it to be abused at our own expense. And these tariffs are just a way and a mechanism of trying to fight back against that. And again, it could be just deals. It could be that we actually want some of those jobs back. What are your guys' take on that?
I think with the tariffs, the biggest problem that even you guys will face is that eventually you hurt your own consumer. And this is like, and this is the huge backfire, because okay, you for example, like you just described the Chinese state economy relations. European Union, a lot of countries in the EU itself, they do the same. They do have the subsidized industries. Agriculture will be one of the examples. Defense industry is another example. Russia, you mentioned, Russia has state-owned enterprises, a lot of them. Agriculture is a heavily subsidized industry. Military is a heavily subsidized industry. Then, I don't know, even some regions are heavily subsidized. So it's not the like one player violates the rule of the game. And I'm sure even if we look deep in the American economic structure, we'll find the industries that will be subsidized.
I'm sure there's some. Probably
EV manufacturing, for example.
EV
manufacturing.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Was
Fair
subsidized.
point. Fair point.
Yeah. So my point over here is that okay, I might understand the overall mood or overall, the flavor that okay, somebody's trying to get advantage of us. But first, I don't think it's to that extent. And second, again, the way the Trump decided to tackle this is a very dangerous double-edged sword. I'm sure it will not solve this particular issue, actually.
And this is the issue, right? I think that's why it has to come down to it being a deal-making mechanism, probably more than anything, right?
I agree. Yeah. Yes, it's definitely a negotiation. The problem now, I think, is that, and Trump, inner circle supports this view, that it is a very narrow path to come out of it as a successor, to actually make better for America in the end, and worse for everyone else. So it's just very dangerous. I'm not telling that what you outlined is wrong in any way or form. That's definitely true that countries are competing. They are trying to be more influential, for their citizens to prosper and be wealthy, as Americans do right now. That's why there is always this kind of love-hate relationship with America and all other countries, because everybody wants to live a better life. But yeah, it's just very very dangerous to do such big changes without thinking for a long time, because we see it in a formula for the tariffs. It's just ridiculous. I would say so. It
You
doesn't.
mean those poor penguins don't deserve the
yeah,
tariffs?
yeah,
that,
and-
Penguins, of course, especially
they've been ripping us
penguins,
off, man. They've
especially-
been ripping us off.
Yeah, and UK, for example, is a great example. US have positive net exports with the UK. So there is an argument that
Positive net export means that US sold more
yes
goods to
so
to-
there
to
is
the
no
UK.
trade deficit. There is trade
surplus.
surplus.
Yeah.
Yes. So there is an argument that UK should be pissed off about America and setting up some kind of reciprocal tariffs.
But we tariff
based
them
on that.
anyway.
Yes, 10%.
So 10% to everybody, irrespective of.
Well, the UK got it even though we have a trade surplus.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So
So there are a lot of jokes and memes about that, but this is really serious stuff because these kind of moves, again, are very dangerous for consumer confidence, for business confidence, for actual big corporations in America like Nike that was like free falling at some point because the almost entire production is in Southeast Asia in Vietnam, which is tariff. So U.S. administration should be looking more like a surgeon with global economy rather than butcher or this is like my general message, I would say.
with Nike, like really poor company, like I was surprised because I read about their case. For the recent 15 years, they were moving their production from China to Vietnam in order to not to deal with China because there was a general political direction. So they moved 50% of their manufacturing to Vietnam, and the rest is spread between China and Malaysia. 3 countries that were tariffed the most.
Poor Nike. Poor Nike.
Exactly. Same happened actually with a lot of other companies. Gap would be one of the example, and Levi's, the jeans.
Jeans, yeah.
Same thing. They moved production, they moved manufacturing from China to Malaysia.
And they still get hit.
26%.
There are some analysts that already calculated the approximate price of iPhone.
$1,400. I think.
Yeah, like basic. For the top line, it's like 2,000 plus.
Yeah.
What it creates is basically there is obvious way for Apple to move its production somewhere else. Yeah, just to avoid the highest tariffs on this table. But the problem that Trump creates now is that he can come up with another table next Wednesday, and that would be a new policy. So how do you expect your economic agents to plan ahead, to make investments, to make discretionary purchases, if we talk about consumer, if there is no clear view of how global economy would be looking like a year from now? So I see your points, but again, I think you should be more sophisticated with the moves.
That goes back to sort of my initial reaction to it. Sentiment-wise, I am sympathetic to the sentiment, but the approach and delivery is scary. It is scary. I think you guys have made a lot of good points. And again, if these maintain, what is the stock market going to do? If the stock market keeps crashing the way it is, and we're still sitting at fairly high valuations, relatively speaking, historically, if you start seeing people lay off a lot of people, if you start seeing what's that going to mean for for employment as well as prices going up at the same time, it could be really dangerous. And again, you mentioned that there's a very fine line that the U.S. needs to walk to come out unscathed, or at least in a positive position. Again, you could have done this a million different ways. You could have only focused on certain countries you wanted to target, like China. That would have been big enough, but it wouldn't be everybody in the entire world. You could have made it certain sectors. You could have maybe planned ahead and said, "Look, we're going to be reevaluating all of our trade relationships. The next 2 or 3 months is going to be we're going to make deals. Otherwise, we're going to hit you with X, Y, and Z tariff." So I agree with you. This is the scary part: is now you don't know what comes next, and it feels like he's shooting from the hip a bit. Is that part of the strategy? That's the question. Could it be, I don't want you to be able to predict my behavior? Possibly. And then I think it's going to come down to what deals come out of it. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Another point, when I was getting ready for our conversation, for our discussion here, I thought that, okay, now of course we can see Trump and his administration. This is their action, but I was thinking, is it only the U.S. in this direction? And it's not. If you and then I tried to do the research, and basically, if we look at the recent 4 or 5 years, the COVID supply chain breaks can be one of the examples of the threats to the global trade, and one of the things where that caused countries to think, okay, we are not secure when it comes to the global trade, so we need to be more self-protected. Okay, one. Then U.S.-China rivalry, CHIPS Act is one of the example. Again, nothing to do with Trump, but it's the overall U.S. direction. And then the thing that surprised me more is the European Union green protectionism, because they say like, okay, for the sake of the environment, for the sake of the climate change protection, for the sake of the the clean air and all of that, we will impose the tariffs. We will impose the special fees for the petrol, for the gas, and for the special equipment. So again, some other protectionist measures. Then, of course, another thing is all the energy shocks we observed with the Russian-Ukraine conflict, with the tension in Europe, Middle East as well, right? And then again, the semiconductors and all the conversation around it. So I was thinking, okay, now we can see the unpredictable Trump and a lot of uncertainty on the market, but do we observe the moving towards the more like economic nationalism versus
protectionism,
the free trade? What do you think on
that? Definitely yes. We see this trend. But I think it's not a sustainable trend. So we will never go to zero again. There should be, whenever something is growing, even if we look at the market, things grow, sometimes create bubbles, and then everybody is kind of disrupted, and everything is falling. But rarely you see that, market collapses, for example, completely to zeros. It's really impossible to see. And the same goes about the global trade. Generally speaking, I believe that I'm a proponent of free markets as much as possible. If you take 10 economists, 10 of them would have different opinions. That's why there is even a famous joke that one of the U.S. president asked to cut one of the hands of his economic advisors, because they were always talking on the one hand, on the other hand. It's a very complicated and difficult field, but we have to think that global trade is a positive force in general. There are some negatives about that some countries start to project their power, project their influence, exactly what U.S. loves to do. And I think the rational goal of United States is just simply to keep dominance, and trying to do it with this shooting from the hip measures is very dangerous, because it is a huge disruption that creates most of the risks for U.S. itself.
It's a fair point. I think it's a great question. And I feel a bit differently from you in the sense that I do think this is here to stay, and I think it's going to continue for quite some time moving forward.
So
deglobalization.
Deglobalization. Yeah, I think we're in a hard deglobalization
moving
phase.
towards the economic nationalism, or whatever we can call it.
Definitely. And I think that's going to maintain, because now we're in a period of this change in the world order, right? Ray Dalio he wrote a book a couple of years about it. It's a great book, and going through what happens when you've got these two competing powers, the U.S. no longer at its peak, right? That's very clear in terms of its financial capacity, in terms of its internal dynamics. It's weaker than it was at its peak, right? So you could argue that the U.S. is a bit of a fading power in some ways. Again, arguable. China's a rising power, right? I think you can pretty much everybody would agree on that. So if that's the dynamic, and then you've got, again, the EU, which is sort of trying to cut out its own piece of the pie. You've got India, who's trying to rise and become a power. I think in this era of conflict, without clear hegemony, then countries are going to naturally want to protect whatever industries they have, promote as many industries as they can, try to, capture as many markets as they can, and then sort of the sword of Damocles, so to speak, that's hanging over all of our necks is this massive debt. So how are we going to then manage all of these debt issues? I think that's where economic nationalism is only going to continue. I think it's going to be, and it's going to, from my perspective, bleed outside of just economics. I do think it's going to mean more military conflicts, more political, geopolitical conflicts.
So you think it will spill over to other areas?
I think it absolutely can. I think one of the famous things that Ray Dalio and even Warren Buffett has said is that trade war is a type of war. It's an economic war. So right now, Trump is waging war on the planet, which is a extremely risky thing to do. But from my perspective, the main target is China. So, and what did China do, interestingly? So Vietnam and Israel very quickly tried to make a deal with the U.S. and are, setting up calls and meetings and whatnot. China immediately came back and said, we're going to throw the same reciprocal 34% tariff on you. Okay, that only raises the stakes and ups the ante. So now it comes down to either we're going to make a deal or one of the most important bilateral trading relationships to global trade is going to go up in smoke. So that smoke could very quickly become military smoke. Because again, we've got issues in the South China Sea. You've got issues with Taiwan. Why is Vietnam so important? So Vietnam was one of the first calls that Trump received. Vietnam is key to an American anti-Chinese alliance, right? There's geopolitics involved in that. So I don't see how, if this continues, where the U.S. is trying to claw and keep its dominance and even expand its dominance, how this doesn't bleed over possibly beyond economics. And that's the scary part.
I thought Vietnam is important because it's the first country that all the other companies use to install their manufacturing or to run the trade through if it's not from China.
Yeah.
Like not as just the...
But it's more, exactly. It's all of it, I think.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
It is a natural place to go. I didn't realize Vietnam is 100 million people. It's a massive country.
It's a huge country. It's a huge country.
So you think of like the labor
I think it's
potential.
even more than 100 million.
So, something like that. I think, it might be even.
It's a huge country.
It's massive. Yeah.
With a very strong actual economic potential.
Yeah, it's enormous. Again, long coastline, trading potential oil and gas resources off the coast of Vietnam, which China also claims as part of its 9-line territorial, situation. So there's a natural area of alignment probably that the Americans and Vietnamese very ironically may have in this new world. And I think this is all more or less the same story. It's a battle for influence. And as you said, every country wants to take care of its people, make sure its people are wealthier and more prosperous and whatever. We've clearly been falling in that category for quite some time. We want to get that back. And it seems like, unfortunately, economics is becoming a zero-sum game, or at least people are seeing it that way. So I don't think you're going to get this return to free trade and all that until you have a new hegemony, until this process is completed. And it's very clear who the new... It could be the U.S. again. It could be a continuation, or it could be something that looks very different. But I think we're in a 1930s type of period.
If we ask Dima, you to kind of summarize what is happening now, what we should expect, and how do you think actually maybe the other economic agents, meaning countries, meaning governments, meaning just personal investors, meaning yourself as a corporate investor, how do you think, what is the right mode of action right now for them?
Basically, the market expects of any good signs, good news at the moment, and we already see some good signs. There is a possible negotiation with Israel. There is definitely direct talks with UK, etc., etc. I believe European Union already described that they would like to sit together with the US and discuss the policy. There was Elon Musk even talking about the fact that he sees the most optimal way of trade between the US and EU to be a zero tariff policy. So I would agree with you that the main adversary for the US in this policy is China, for sure, because it is the Chinese who are the biggest threat for US dominance. In terms of economic agents, I believe that while we all look after some positive signs, all of the economic agents, both corporate and just regular people, would be in a more kind of stay away from the market. Let's see where it resolves. And in this particular time periods throughout the history, the most important thing becomes timing. Because if you postpone your negotiations with your partners for a long time, or you start to be, over push, and there is no clear resolution, then that might actually kick off like a spiral leading to a recession. So timing is of utmost importance at the moment. I believe if it is in fact negotiation technique, then they should be in a ASAP mode for now to resolve this. At least send some positive signals like, okay, guys, we are in negotiations with the EU. Obviously, EU is our closest ally, etc., etc. Many good words, but you have to send some signals to the world that it is not, in fact, global war, economic now, but still it is a war. It is some kind of negotiation. So you have to be careful now not to make any strong decisions. Don't buy, sell a lot. Just keep it.
Don't
keep
panic.
it to yourself. Yeah. Don't try to time the market. Many people say that at the time of this great volatility and fear on the market, it's a great time to buy.
Michael, any final thoughts from your end? And to inspire you,
Oh, wow.
I want to give you your national hero.
Wow. I really appreciate this. It's funny, it was your birthday yesterday, but it feels like it's my birthday with this gift you're giving me.
What should we say? Happy Liberation Day?
Yes, wish me happy Liberation Day. Yeah, that works. I think as we talked about, maybe this could end up quite positive for the US. We'll see. I think, final takeaways from my perspective, Trump essentially detonated an economic nuclear weapon on the world last week.
Good quote.
With this Liberation Day. I think the question will be, and the most important thing will be, to your point, Dima, how quickly can we get this solved? The longer that these tariffs stay in place, 22% on average, 34% with China, every single good will receive that tariff every single day until any of that changes. The economy is going to fold like a house of cards real quick if that isn't alleviated. Again, when iPhones are $1,400 and not $1,000, suddenly everybody's costs are going up. That means inflation. That means fewer jobs. That means the entire global economy is going to be in a pretty bad state. So I am hopeful that this is a negotiation tactic. Again, all this being said from the beginning, I do stand by the basic framework that it is in America's interest to renegotiate the trading relationships. But again, I think the way Trump is going about it is, extremely aggressive, and only time will tell what comes next. But I think everybody should be, as you said, cautious and just in wait-and-see mode. We'll see. Great. Well, great discussion, guys. That was, again, it's funny, only a couple weeks ago we're talking about tariffs, and now we're back because tariffs are front and center of the news. So with that, really appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you like our content,